Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes. Stalingrad, winter of 1942. The wind alone could freeze the buttons off your coat, and that's before the artillery even starts. Picture it. The Volga River is a sheet of cracked glass. The air smells of smoke and iron, and the horizon glows faint orange where the city burns beneath the snow. You take a step forward, and the crunch beneath your boots could be ice or something less poetic. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand on the frozen bank of the Volga, breath fogging in the moonlight. Across the river, the city looks half-drowned in mist. Soviet ferries, really just patched-up rafts, creak under the weight of men and supplies. Somewhere out there, a German spotlight sweeps the fog like an impatient cat chasing ghosts. It's cold enough that your eyelashes stick together when you blink. You're part of a column trudging toward the city that carries Stalin's name. Each step feels heavier, as if gravity itself deepens near Stalingrad. Historians still argue whether this battle was about strategy, pride, or just two egos too frozen to turn back. Either way, it's about to become the point where the tide of World War II shifts. Behind you, officers bark orders muffled by scarves. Ahead, artillery pops in lazy rhythm, soft thuds like someone knocking on a distant door. The Volga looks peaceful, even beautiful, but everyone knows it's a trap. Beneath the ice are wrecked boats, lost soldiers, and more stories than the historians can ever dig up. You reach the far side, boots clanging against steel as you step off the ferry. The first thing that hits you isn't fear, it's the smell. Burning oil, frozen blood, bread somewhere turning to charcoal. Civilians shuffle past with blank faces, carrying whatever they can – pots, portraits, pieces of their old lives. One woman stops and hands you a single apple. She doesn't say a word. It's green, wrinkled, and precious like gold. You tuck it away, promising yourself you'll eat it when the firing stops. Spoiler, it won't stop. A sergeant points you toward the ruins of a factory, once making tractors, now assembling tanks. Sparks shower from its broken roof, painting the snow orange. The workers inside wear layers of rags, their faces blackened by frostbite and food. You can't help but think, this isn't war, it's endurance theater. Everyone's pretending the world isn't collapsing just to get through another day. You find a place to rest, a half-collapsed stairwell. The bricks still radiate faint warmth from a recent shell impact. You pull your coat tighter, staring up at the dark sky where snowflakes drift like falling ash. Somewhere far away, a German broadcast announces that Stalingrad will fall in days. You almost laugh. Here in the frozen trenches, days don't exist anymore. There's only night, cold and waiting. A fellow soldier slides beside you, offering a cigarette made from paper torn out of a German manual. He grins and says, "If we survive, we'll open a museum about this madness. You tell him he should start drafting the brochure now." He laughs. It's the kind of laugh people give when they've already accepted the odds. As dawn creeps in, the city reveals itself, chimneys rising like gravestones, wires dangling like cobwebs. The Volga glints behind you, trapped under thin ice. You rub your hands together, but the cold has already numbed the sensation. Somewhere in your pocket, the apple feels like a rock. A plane drones overhead. You freeze, listening. It's German, but it doesn't drop bombs this time. Just propaganda leaflets fluttering down like snowflakes. "Give up," they say. "You are surrounded." You watch one land on your boot and think, not yet. For now you're here, alive in the stillness before the storm truly begins. You can sense the weight of millions of footsteps, German boots, Soviet felt shoes, horses, tanks, all converging on this one patch of frozen earth. Stalingrad isn't just a city anymore. It's a symbol, a stage, and a slow, grinding nightmare that will swallow both sides whole. You take a deep breath. The air cuts your throat like glass, but you smile anyway. Because strangely, there's beauty here. The kind of beauty born from defiance. A city refusing to die.
The night deepens over the Volga, and you can still hear the river groaning beneath the ice. Each crack sounds like a cannon far away, or maybe it's just the earth stretching from the cold. You pull your coat tighter and wonder how this madness began. How the world, already choking on war, decided that this frozen city would be the center of it all. Months earlier, in the summer of 1941, Operation Barbarossa had roared to life. Hitler's army stormed into the Soviet Union with more than 3 million men, an invasion so vast it made Napoleon's look like a hiking trip. The plan was supposed to be quick and glorious: crush the Red Army, seize Moscow, and celebrate before winter. But you know how that story goes. Historians still argue whether arrogance or logistics doomed the Germans first. Either way, by the time the leaves turned gold, the blitzkrieg had slowed to a crawl. You picture it: endless convoys stretching across Ukrainian plains, tanks bogged down in mud thick as porridge. Soviet resistance stiffens, villages burn. The German soldiers sing songs about Christmas back home, not realizing they'll spend the next winter freezing in places with names they can't pronounce. Fast forward to 1942. Hitler, frustrated, shifts his gaze south to the oil fields of the Caucasus and the industrial city guarding the Volga, Stalingrad. Taking it would cut Soviet supply lines and strike a blow straight at Stalin's pride. You imagine Hitler tracing a line on the map with one finger, saying something about destiny. He always liked that word, destiny. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Stalin listens, silent as granite. He refuses to evacuate Stalingrad, ordering that "not one step back" decree. You can almost hear his voice echo through the corridors of the Kremlin, as if sheer stubbornness could melt bullets. Maybe it could. Maybe it did. You stand now in that decree's shadow. The city's name, Stalingrad, means this can't just be another battle. It's personal. For both sides, it's become myth before it's even over. The summer offensive begins. German bombers darken the sky, turning entire districts into firestorms. From above, the city looks like a glowing scar stretching along the Volga. You watch through the smoke as waves of refugees flee east across the river. Boats sink under the weight of civilians, but the current keeps carrying bodies downstream, silent and indifferent. The German Sixth Army, under General Friedrich Paulus, advances with clockwork precision. You march alongside them, streets littered with bricks, bicycles, half-melted toys. A dog barks once, then disappears into the smoke. You catch yourself thinking the city looks less conquered than haunted. As the days pass, the Wehrmacht pushes forward, taking neighborhood after neighborhood. Every map looks encouraging, little arrows creeping closer to the Volga, but reality disagrees. Soviet snipers hide in chimneys, cellars, even inside burnt-out streetcars. You glimpse one for a second, a shadow with eyes, and then he's gone. You ask an older soldier what he thinks of the progress. He shrugs and says, "We take the same factory every morning and lose it every night." He's not joking. The battle begins to settle into a rhythm, almost like a deadly routine. One evening, you pass through the shell of a school building. The blackboard is still covered in chalk equations. Someone, probably a child, has drawn a crude picture of a tank with a smiley face. For a brief moment, the absurdity of it all makes you laugh. That's joke number one tonight. Even in war, kids' doodles outlast battle plans. At headquarters, officers argue about priorities. Should they push to the river or clear the city block by block? Someone mutters that this place is eating divisions faster than the kitchens can cook.
The younger officers keep faith in their leader. Paulus, tall and polite, isn't a fan of shouting. He believes in order, in logic. What he doesn't believe in yet is how little of either survives in Stalingrad. Night falls again. You're sitting beside a smashed fountain, eating bread so hard it could chip a tooth. Across the square, a German soldier plays a harmonica. The melody is faint, lonely, almost tender. It reminds you of trains, home, and all the warm places that exist only in memory. Then an artillery shell lands nearby, and the music ends mid-note. Still, the rhythm of the offensive continues. Each day starts with bombing, ends with counting who's missing. You can feel the city absorbing everything: noise, smoke, men, machines, like a living organism feeding on conflict. One morning, as you follow a patrol through a cratered street, you see something almost comical. A sign that once said Tractor Factory now reads Actor Factory, a missing letter, courtesy of shrapnel. You joke that at least the drama here is convincing. The others don't laugh, but you do, softly. Humor is oxygen now. Back at camp, rumors spread that Hitler himself is obsessed with taking this city. Some say he checks Stalingrad's position on his map every morning, tapping it with a ruler like an impatient teacher. Historians still debate how much of the disaster came from his micromanaging. You already suspect the answer: a lot. By late September, the Volga glitters under a cruel sun. Soviet reinforcements cross under constant fire. Each boat that makes it is a miracle. You can see the determination on their faces, exhausted, dirty, but unbroken. They don't look like they're defending a city. They look like they're defending the idea that it's possible to survive anything. That night, as you huddle near a shattered fountain, someone whispers that winter's coming early. You look at the horizon and feel it too, the air heavier, the wind sharper. Soon the snow will fall again, and both armies will realize they're trapped in a place no one truly owns anymore. For now, though, you close your eyes, listening to the low hum of distant engines, the rustle of paper maps, the shuffle of boots. The war has settled into its rhythm, and Stalingrad, that stubborn city, refuses to fall.
The first snow arrives quietly, like a warning whispered across the rooftops. You wake to a sky the color of dull steel, and a silence so deep it feels staged, like the world is holding its breath before another act begins. Your fingers are numb before you even climb out of your makeshift shelter, and your breath turns into fog you could almost sculpt. By now, the map of Stalingrad in your mind looks less like a city and more like a battlefield made of ghosts. Streets no longer have names. They're just that place with the burned trolley, or the block where Ivan never came back. Historians still argue whether the Soviet command ever intended to hold the city at all costs, or if they simply refused to admit defeat. Either way, you're standing in a monument to stubbornness. The factories, those jagged giants of brick and metal, are still alive, somehow. You walk past the Barricadi gun plant and the Red October factory, both still hammering, grinding, clanging, even as artillery shells burst nearby. Sparks leap into the sky like fireflies made of iron. Women, teenagers, even old men are at the machines, building rifles and tank parts with hands wrapped in bloody bandages. It's surreal watching production lines run inside skeletons of buildings. One woman catches your eye, hair covered in frost, expression unreadable. She nods once, wordlessly, then keeps welding as if she's got dinner plans later. You want to say something brave, but all that comes out is a weak smile. Sometimes courage looks like indifference. Across the river, German bombers return, cutting the sky into ribbons of smoke. The city doesn't even flinch anymore. The anti-aircraft guns bark, and somewhere a Soviet pilot shouts through a crackling radio. You glance up just in time to see a plane spiral down in flames, its light fading behind the warehouses. You wonder if it's strange to think that beauty and horror can share the same moment. Probably. You think it anyway. Inside the ruins, Soviet soldiers prepare ambushes. They call it sniper country. Every window could hide a rifle. You hear whispers of one name, Vasily Zaitsev, the sharpshooter from Siberia, said to count his kills like bedtime stories. The men adore him. The Germans fear him. You catch a glimpse of a poster scribbled on a wall, every bullet, one German. It's both terrifying and oddly poetic. By mid-afternoon, you join a patrol pushing through the industrial district. You crawl past shattered glass and twisted pipes. The snow hides nothing. It just makes death look cleaner. Somewhere nearby, someone plays an accordion. Off-key, but earnest. You can't decide if it's an act of defiance or insanity. Maybe both. You duck into what used to be a canteen. The tables are gone, but a kettle still sits on the counter, frozen mid-boil. A soldier jokes, "At least the tea won't overheat." You laugh because he's trying. That's joke number 1 today, and maybe the best one you'll hear for weeks. Later, a supply runner brings news reinforcements from Siberia are arriving. You imagine men wrapped in fur, carrying rifles older than their grandfathers. They say these troops don't fear the cold, they were born in it. The idea alone warms you for a second. Evening falls fast. You sit by a broken window, staring at the flickering light from explosions beyond the Volga. Someone hums a folk song so softly, you can't tell if it's Russian or German. For a fleeting moment, you think about home, whatever that means now. Historians will later argue if there was ever such a thing as a home front at Stalingrad. It feels like the front swallowed everything. A runner bursts in with orders, "Move positions." You grab your gear, stepping back into the wind that bites like a feral animal. The snow is heavier now, swirling around like it's enjoying the chaos. Your boots crunch against something metallic. You glance down, a dented helmet, half buried, marked with a bullet hole. You keep walking. Somewhere to your left, a German loudspeaker begins blaring, "Surrender, comrades! You are surrounded! Stalingrad will fall!" Someone beside you shouts back, "Come and get it!" And the whole unit bursts out laughing, the sound half mad, half heroic. You can't tell which half you're part of. That night, you rest in the ruins of the tractor factory. The walls are warm from fire, the floor sticky with oil. You eat a piece of bread so stale it sounds like wood snapping. A comrade beside you murmurs, "If we live through this, I'll never complain about Monday again." You chuckle, agreeing. Monday feels like a fairy tale from another life. The temperature drops. You pull your coat tighter and listen as the city breathes, metal groaning, snow hissing, men coughing in the dark. You realize Stalingrad isn't dying, it's transforming. Every blast reshapes it, every spark keeps it alive. It's no longer Stalin's city or Hitler's target. It's something else, something primal, born from ice and exhaustion. You look out over the rooftops where smoke curls against the moonlight. Somewhere, an artillery shell whistles. You whisper to yourself, "Here we go again." And the night answers with thunder.
By the time morning crawls back into Stalingrad, the city feels less like a battleground and more like a frozen hallucination. You wake up with ice on your eyelashes, and for a few seconds, you forget which side of the river you're on. Then you hear it, the deep, rhythmic pounding of Soviet artillery across the Volga. It's not just gunfire anymore. It's like the heartbeat of a monster that refuses to die. You stretch, shake the snow from your coat, and check your rifle. The metal is so cold it feels alive, biting at your fingers. Around you, men stir slowly, coughing, muttering, swearing softly in Russian, German, Ukrainian, languages melting together into one exhausted symphony. Someone passes around a tin of frozen potatoes. You joke that it's crunchy soup, and a few tired smiles appear. There's your daily quota of humor, fragile but real. The air smells of cordite, smoke, and something chemical from the factories. You look up. The sun is nothing more than a pale smudge behind a curtain of ash. Somewhere a German tank engine roars. It sounds closer than it should be. You realize how strange it is to live in a world where every vibration under your feet might mean death or lunch being cooked in a distant shelter. Today's mission is simple. Hold the line. But simple in Stalingrad is a joke all by itself. You move through the ruins of what was once Pavlov's house, a building so fiercely defended that it will later become legend. The story goes that a sergeant named Yakov Pavlov and his men turned this ordinary apartment block into a fortress. They reinforced walls with rubble, set up machine gun nests in kitchens, and kept a piano as cover for ammunition. You run your hand over the cracked plaster and wonder how many ghosts are watching you right now. Historians still argue whether the legend of Pavlov's house was exaggerated by Soviet propaganda, but you can feel the stubborn spirit of it. Even if half of it's myth, it's the kind of myth that keeps people breathing. Outside, snow drifts between the wreckage of trolley cars and shattered fences. You hear a voice shout, "Panzer ahead!" and suddenly the air explodes. You dive behind a brick wall as the tank's cannon tears through the next building. Dust fills your lungs, and for a heartbeat you think you've gone deaf. Then you hear the sharp, almost delicate crack of an anti-tank rifle firing back. When the smoke clears, the tank burns quietly, its metal hissing like a giant sigh. Someone cheers. Someone else just collapses in the snow, staring at the sky as if trying to remember what clouds used to look like. By midday, reinforcements finally cross the Volga, thin lines of men shuffling through ice floes under artillery fire. You help drag a wounded soldier up the riverbank, his uniform stiff with blood and frost. He whispers something about his mother's soup. You tell him he'll have it again soon, even though both of you know it's a lie. That's what passes for kindness here. You climb back to your post, passing a sign scrawled in charcoal, "Not one step back." You grin at the irony. It's the official Stalin order, but now it just feels like dark humor. Someone's added underneath in smaller letters, "Because there's nowhere left to go." Evening brings the inevitable counterattack. German flares light up the ruins, bathing everything in ghostly green. You can see silhouettes moving between the rubble, helmets, rifles, the flash of bayonets. You fire until your shoulder aches, reload by instinct, then keep firing. Every burst of gunfire feels both pointless and essential. A soldier beside you mutters, "If we survive this, drinks are on me." You smirk, "If we survive this, I'll even buy the glass." That earns a brief laugh before another shell lands nearby, turning humor back into dust. At some point, your senses blur. The battlefield becomes a dream. The world narrows to sound and motion. The ping of bullets on metal, the crunch of boots on ice, the distant scream of something human or mechanical. It's all one now. When the attack finally fades, you find yourself sitting amid ruins, rifle across your knees, staring at a snow-covered shape that might once have been a piano. You press a key. It makes no sound. You imagine the note echoing anyway, drifting somewhere above the frozen river. Historians later describe this period as the grind phase of the battle, when both armies bled each other slowly, methodically, with no end in sight. Some say this was when the Germans began to realize they couldn't win. Others argue that realization came too late, buried under pride and frostbite. You don't think about strategy. You think about how quiet the night feels after so much noise. You glance at the horizon. The city glows faintly from distant fires, a strange, shimmering beauty in its ruin. Snow keeps falling, soft, patient, endless. You can't help but smile at the thought. Even the weather's on nobody's side. You lie back against the wall, staring at the stars that peek through the smoke. Someone hums the same off-key accordion tune from yesterday. You wonder if it's the same guy or just the same madness repeating itself. Either way, it's comforting in a weird, broken way. You close your eyes, and for a few seconds, you let yourself drift. Tomorrow will be worse, but for now, the city is still yours.
When dawn creeps over the Volga again, the light doesn't look like hope. It looks like a sickly bruise spreading across the horizon. You pull your coat tighter, though it barely helps. The cold here isn't a temperature anymore. It's a presence, a thing that lives beside you, breathing against your skin, whispering that it'll outlast you. Around you, the remains of the 62nd Army hold position, or what's left of it anyway. Faces gray with exhaustion, eyes half closed from smoke and sleeplessness. They've stopped counting the days. The city itself seems alive now, a creature of shattered concrete and iron, groaning and steaming under the weight of its own scars. You can almost hear it muttering in Russian and German at once, both languages blending into one long sigh. Just end this. But you can't. Not yet. Today, you're tasked with holding a crumbling apartment block near the Red October factory. Historians will later call this Rattenkrieg, the Rat War, because that's exactly what it feels like. Fighting from room to room, stairwell to stairwell, often separated from the enemy by a single wall. You can hear them breathe on the other side. You can smell their rations, their cigarettes, their fear. A fellow soldier, Mikhail, whispers, "You think they feel the same about us?" You shrug. Probably worse. We've got better jokes. It earns a soft chuckle, the only kind of laughter that doesn't echo. You check your gear again. Ammunition's low, food's gone, but someone found a tin of condensed milk. It's frozen solid, of course, so you chip off shards with your knife like candy. Sweet, metallic candy of war. The building shakes as artillery lands nearby. Plaster rains down like snow. You imagine the ghosts of Stalingrad sneezing from the dust. Outside, through a shattered window, you glimpse movement, German infantry advancing, gray silhouettes against the white snow. You can see their breath pluming like steam engines. There's something almost peaceful about it, like a winter parade, until the first grenade rolls in. You dive, feel the air crack, then realize you're still alive, barely. You return fire instinctively, without thought. The walls seem to breathe with every explosion. You think of how absurd it is, two armies fighting over staircases, kitchens, and bathrooms. A historian once wrote that during Stalingrad, some snipers fought for days over a single hallway. You can believe it. There's a strange intimacy to this kind of war. You know your enemy's footsteps, his cough, even his impatience. Sometimes you shoot by sound alone. Sometimes you just wait, because waiting hurts less than firing. By midday, you and your unit fall back into the basement, a maze of rubble, ice, and shadow. Someone's made a small fire out of broken furniture. The smoke burns your eyes, but you crowd around it anyway. The warmth feels like luxury. Mikhail pulls out a battered deck of cards. He says, "No stakes. We've all lost everything already." You laugh softly, deal the cards, and play in silence, your gloves stiff with frost. When someone wins a hand, you raise an imaginary glass. "To tomorrow," you say. "May it be slightly less terrible." In a corner, a young soldier sketches something in the soot on the wall, rough outlines of his village, a horse, a woman. "That's my wife," he says shyly. "At least that's how she looks now." You nod. "Close enough," you tell him. "It's not the art that matters. It's the memory." Above ground, the fight rages on. You hear the roar of a Stuka dive bomber, that banshee wail that makes your teeth ache. You brace for impact. The ceiling trembles, but holds. You exhale slowly. Somewhere up there, another street has disappeared. Evening descends again. The light fades to blue, then black,
and the cold deepens like an ocean filling the city. You huddle close to the others, passing around a flask of antifreeze-tasting vodka. Someone begins to hum a lullaby his mother used to sing, soft, slow, almost tender. The sound echoes faintly through the cracks. You think about the absurdity of it all, men singing lullabies in a city that's nothing but rubble. But maybe that's what makes humans strange and beautiful. We sing even when there's no reason left to. Historians still argue whether it was discipline, desperation, or pure stubbornness that kept the Soviets fighting here. You suspect it's simpler than that. It's about not wanting your friends' deaths to mean nothing. It's about wanting one more sunrise, even if it looks like a bruise. Later that night, you volunteer for watch duty. The moon glints on broken glass and twisted metal, turning everything silver. In the silence, you hear faint scraping, a rat maybe, or a German patrol. You raise your rifle and wait. The noise fades, you lower the gun and exhale. A tiny snowflake drifts on your sleeve, perfectly shaped. You stare at it until it melts. You can't help but laugh quietly to yourself. This little miracle of geometry still happens even here. You whisper to no one, "We're still alive." Then, after a pause, "For now." The city answers with distant thunder, maybe artillery, maybe the sound of history shifting.
You wake to a kind of darkness that feels thicker than night. The air is heavy, damp, and tastes faintly of rust and candle smoke. Somewhere above, snow muffles the world. Down here, beneath the city, time doesn't flow the same way. It drips, slow, uneven, like water through the cracks of memory. You're in what used to be a storm drain, or maybe part of the factory's old maintenance tunnels. No one really knows anymore. The walls are slick with frost. The ceiling is low enough that you have to hunch. Your breath makes small clouds that hang in place, unwilling to leave. This is home now, a pocket of earth between the dead above and the frozen below. You shuffle toward the dim glow of a lantern. A handful of soldiers are already awake, whispering around a pot of something vaguely edible. The smell tells you it's a stew of melted snow, boot leather, and whatever rat dared to wander too close last night. Someone cracks a joke about the secret Stalingrad diet. Guaranteed to make you lose weight and hope, he says, and the others chuckle quietly. It's humor born of exhaustion, the kind that hurts more than it heals. You take a sip. It's warm, at least. Warm is a miracle here. Up above, you hear the muffled thud of shells. Each one makes the dirt tremble like the city's heartbeat. You've grown used to it. When the sounds stop, that's when you worry. Silence is what kills the imagination. It lets you hear your thoughts too clearly. A medic crouches beside you, wrapping a bandage around a man's frostbitten hand. "He'll lose 2 fingers," she murmurs. "Better than losing the whole hand." You nod. In Stalingrad, that's optimism. You remember how, before the war, this city was a place of industry and music. Now the only rhythm left is the cadence of explosions. You can't recall the last time you saw sunlight, just the faint glow through smoke, the color of old paper. Someone mentions a rumor. Supplies are coming. Real food, maybe even chocolate. Historians still debate whether these hope rumors were deliberate morale tactics or simply collective self-defense against despair. Either way, everyone clings to them like religion. Mikhail, ever the comedian, sighs dramatically. "When this is over, I'm opening a restaurant. No rats, no bullets, just soup." "What kind?" you ask. "The hot kind," he replies, grinning. For a brief moment, the war feels far away.
Then footsteps echo from the tunnel entrance, hurried, heavy. A runner bursts in, face pale with cold. "German patrol 2 blocks north," he pants. "They're moving toward the factory." The room stiffens. Everyone grabs their weapons. You extinguish the lantern. Darkness swallows you all again. You move out quietly, guided by touch and instinct. The tunnels twist like a labyrinth. The air grows colder, sharper. You surface through a manhole into what used to be a courtyard. Snowflakes drift through beams of moonlight like dust in an old photograph. You crouch behind a half-buried truck, listening. Voices echo down the street, German, steady, deliberate. You can hear the clink of metal, the crunch of boots on ice. You raise your rifle, wait, breathe. The moment stretches, fragile as glass. Then, one by one, shadows appear through the smoke. The firefight lasts less than a minute, but feels eternal. When it's done, the street is silent again, except for the groan of wind through broken windows. You reload, hands trembling, and realize how automatic it's become. Killing here is just another routine. Back in the tunnels, you sit down against the wall. Your body feels ancient, carved from stone. Someone offers you a cigarette stub. You take it, light it, and watch the ember glow like a tiny star. You think about home, not a specific place, just the idea of warmth. You try to imagine your bed, your street, the smell of coffee, anything soft. But all you can picture is snow falling over ruins. A historian once wrote that soldiers in Stalingrad stopped dreaming of victory. They dreamed of breakfast, of silence, of not being cold. Mikhail nudges you. "You know what's funny? We're living underground like moles, but it still feels safer than up there." You grin faintly. "Maybe we're evolving." "Yeah," he says. "Next war, we'll be fish." The laughter fades, replaced by the hum of the wind above. You close your eyes, listening to it, pretending it's the ocean, pretending this tunnel is a shoreline, and that if you walk far enough, you'll find light again. Tomorrow, you'll climb back into the ruins. You'll fight for the same buildings, the same walls, the same few meters of snow. But for now, here in this hollow beneath the earth, you can almost believe the world has paused to let you rest. You take one last drag, blow out a thin thread of smoke, and watch it disappear. Somewhere in the distance, artillery booms again. The ground shakes lightly, like a tired giant turning over in his sleep. You whisper into the dark, "We're still here." The city doesn't answer, but you swear you feel it listening.
The next morning arrives not with sunlight, but with vibration. Deep, distant thunder rolling across the frozen horizon. You blink awake to find the air electric, tense, as if the city itself is holding its breath. The noise doesn't sound like regular artillery. It's heavier, steadier, organized. You crawl toward the stairwell, peer through a hole in the wall, and see something new on the skyline. Columns of smoke rising from the steppe beyond Stalingrad. It takes a second for your mind to catch up. This isn't another German bombardment. This is Soviet firepower. Someone nearby mutters, "Southien Wurong," under his breath. Operation Uranus. The codename feels cosmic, like a god waking up. For months you've been the ones trapped, barely clinging to the city's skeleton. But now the rumble feels different. It's a heartbeat from the other side. You grab your gear and head topside with Mikhail. The air smells of ozone and cordite. Across the river, flashes light up the horizon, thousands of guns firing in synchrony. It's as if dawn has been replaced by artillery. You can feel it through your boots, through your chest. "Looks like someone finally remembered us," Mikhail says, grinning through cracked lips. The Soviet counter-offensive begins like a storm tearing across open plains. Far to the north and south of the city, Red Army divisions, Kazakh cavalry, Siberian infantry, tank brigades rolling through frost are smashing into the flanks of the German 6th Army. For weeks you've been fighting house to house. Now you realize the real battle is happening miles away in the snow-covered wilderness. Historians still argue whether the Germans underestimated Soviet planning or simply ignored it, too obsessed with taking the city. Either way, their supply lines are stretched, their armor worn thin, and winter, your oldest ally, is back with a vengeance. By afternoon you can hear distant explosions in strange directions, north, then west, then behind the enemy lines. You exchange glances. Could it be? Are the Germans surrounded? When word finally reaches you through the crackling field radio, it feels unreal. The Red Army has closed the circle at Kalach, two pincers meeting like jaws of an iron beast. The German 6th Army, nearly 300,000 men, is trapped inside Stalingrad. The hunters have become the hunted. You look at Mikhail. He raises his eyebrows. Guess we're the ones besieging now. You both laugh, though it sounds strange in your mouths, laughter tinged with disbelief. The next days unfold in a blur of shock and momentum. Soviet troops pour through breaches in the German lines. The frozen steppe becomes a graveyard of tanks, white shapes against gray snow, like bones of ancient beasts. You march through captured trenches, passing abandoned helmets, scattered maps, half-burned letters written in neat German cursive. One of them reads, "We will be home by Christmas." You fold the letter, slip it into your pocket, and keep walking. It feels like carrying a ghost. At night, the sky glows with fire. Artillery flashes on all sides of the trapped city, a ring of flame tightening by the hour. You imagine what it must feel like inside the German headquarters. Officers pacing, radio operators screaming into static, fuel and food dwindling. Somewhere out there, General Paulus is probably staring at a map, refusing to believe the lines no longer make sense. A rumor spreads among your unit. Hitler has ordered Paulus to hold at all costs, promising air resupply. Everyone laughs. You know how winter treats promises. Planes can barely fly in this weather, and even when they do, they drop less food than the city's rats could carry. Still, you can't underestimate desperation. The encircled army is wounded, but not dead. They fight harder now, defensive, feral, like animals cornered in their own lair. Every advance costs blood. One afternoon you pass through the ruins of a tram depot and stumble upon a small miracle, a German field kitchen still smoldering. Inside you find bread, hard as rock, but edible. Mikhail grins. 5-star dining, he says, breaking it in half. You chew in silence, the taste of smoke and ash reminding you how absurdly grateful hunger can make a man. Later you help dig new positions in the snow. The shovels clang against frozen ground. Each breath feels like swallowing needles. Yet beneath the fatigue there's something new in everyone's eyes. Purpose. For the first time, Stalingrad doesn't feel like a tomb. It feels like a turning point. Historians often call this week the moment history tilted, the day the tide of the entire war began to shift. Whether that's poetic exaggeration or military analysis doesn't matter. What you feel crouched behind your rifle in the frozen dark is simpler. Hope. A fragile, flickering thing, but real. At night, you and Mikhail sit by a makeshift fire, staring up at the distant aurora shimmering faintly over the steppe. "You ever think," he says, "when this is over, no one will believe us. They'll think we made it all up." I smile. "Good. Let them sleep easy." He nods. "Maybe that's the point." I toss a bit of kindling into the flame, watch the sparks rise like fireflies.
For a heartbeat, I imagine each spark as a soul, millions of them, drifting above the frozen city, waiting for the world to remember. The wind howls again, cold and endless, but this time it sounds less like mourning and more like applause.
The city has become a circle of ice and smoke. From above, if anyone could still see through the winter haze, Stalingrad would look like the eye of a storm. Gray, cracked, and bleeding steam into the frozen sky. Inside that eye, hundreds of thousands of men, German and Soviet alike, grind through another day that feels exactly like yesterday. You wake to the sound of someone coughing. Not the sharp bark of sickness, but that hollow, rasping sound of lungs freezing from the inside. You look over and see Mikhail sitting up, his breath misting like smoke. "Still here," he says, forcing a grin. "Still ugly?" You hand him the last piece of bread. Stale, black, frozen. "Breakfast of champions," you say. He laughs weakly. "If the war doesn't kill us, this food will." Outside, the temperature has dropped again. The cold no longer feels like weather. It feels like punishment. Even the snow seems tired, drifting down in half-hearted flakes. You step outside your shelter and scan the horizon. Somewhere out there, inside the encircled German lines, tens of thousands are trapped. You could almost feel their despair radiating through the still air. Reports come in over the radio. The Sixth Army is running out of fuel, medicine, and hope. Horses have long since been eaten. Bread is mixed with sawdust. Soldiers trade cigarettes for snow. Historians still argue whether Hitler truly believed the Luftwaffe could resupply them. But down here, on the frozen earth, belief has nothing to do with it. Men are dying by the hour, and even faith freezes eventually. You move with your unit toward the northern sector. Your boots crunch on a path of glassy ice that used to be a street. The skeletal remains of trolley wires hang above like cobwebs. A burned-out tank juts from the snow at an angle as if frozen mid-climb toward the sky. Mikhail points at it. "He is art," he says. "You have strange taste," you reply. "War changes your standards." You both laugh softly, the kind of laugh that doesn't quite reach your eyes. By midday, a blizzard rolls in. Snow and ash swirl together, blinding everything. The wind screams through the ruins, erasing all sound except its own. You can't see more than a few meters ahead. The world becomes white, infinite, merciless. Then, through the storm, you hear shouting. German voices. You duck behind a wrecked wall, heart pounding. A patrol, lost, stumbling through the snow. They look more like shadows than soldiers, faces sunken, eyes hollow, uniforms wrapped in rags. You watch them pass, their rifles dragging like dead weight. Mikhail whispers, "We could take them." You shake your head. "Let them go. They're already ghosts." He nods. You both stay still until the storm swallows the figures whole. Later, when the blizzard finally fades, you help dig trenches along the frozen embankment. Your hands bleed from the cold. Every shovelful of earth feels like lifting part of the planet. But work keeps you sane. It's something you can still control. At sunset, the air turns pink, reflecting off the snow. The beauty of it feels obscene, almost cruel. How can something so quiet exist here among all this ruin? You think of how absurdly human it is to notice sunsets during war. Maybe it's a form of rebellion, the soul's refusal to give up small wonders. Night brings the eerie light of flares drifting across the city. They hang in the air like slow-moving stars. Somewhere, artillery fires again, sporadic, uncertain. You listen, count the seconds between blasts, and realize the rhythm is breaking down.
The German guns are firing less now, shorter barrages, fewer shells. Mikhail notices it too. They're running out, he says softly. Of ammo? Of everything. You don't reply. There's no satisfaction in it, only a dull ache. Inside a half-ruined factory, you find the remnants of a German field post, maps pinned to cracked concrete, notes scrawled in pencil. You trace one of the red lines with your glove. It loops around the city like a snake eating itself. A historian might later write about this moment as the compression of chaos, how an army that once stretched from the Volga to the Don was reduced to a handful of square kilometers. You just see exhaustion written into every mark on the map. You hear distant engines, Soviet tanks moving closer. The trap tightens with every hour. Soon there will be no sky left to flee into, no ground left to hold. Mikhail leans against the wall. You ever feel sorry for them? I hesitate. Sometimes. Yeah, he says, me too. But then I remember, they started it. You both fall silent. Somewhere in the dark, ice cracks. When morning returns, it's barely different from night. You eat what's left of yesterday's soup, mostly melted snow and potato peel, and warm your hands over a dying fire. Around you, soldiers move like sleepwalkers, faces blank, eyes fixed on the invisible horizon. Someone whispers that Paulus has asked Hitler for permission to retreat. Someone else says the answer was no. You shake your head. No one wins by staying still, you murmur. But in Stalingrad, no one leaves either. The city holds everyone, friend and foe alike, in its frozen embrace. Historians will later say the encirclement was complete by late November. You'll remember it differently. As the week the world stopped moving, and the snow began to bury both victory and defeat together. That night before sleep claims you, you think you hear singing again, faint, from somewhere far across the ruins. A German lullaby, maybe, soft, broken, carried on the wind. You close your eyes, listening. It's not a song of defiance or faith. It's just tired.
Morning doesn't so much arrive as it limps into existence. The sky is a pale bruise of gray and yellow, the kind of light that looks exhausted before it even begins. You stretch beneath your tattered blanket, joints cracking like thin ice. Around you, men are already awake, rubbing their hands, stamping their boots, trading rumors like currency. Paulus is negotiating, someone mutters. He's gotta be. No army can last like this. You want to believe it, but the war has trained you to distrust hope. Still, the idea hangs in the air like a faint scent of bread, sweet, impossible, cruel. As you move through the shattered factory, you pass a wall scrawled with charcoal. Zdez mi byli. We were here. You trace the words with your glove. You don't know who wrote them, or if they survived, but the message feels like a whisper from every soldier who's ever wanted to matter. By now, both sides are starving. German troops boil leather straps for soup. Soviet rations arrive frozen into unbreakable blocks. The Volga is no longer a river. It's a frozen highway of corpses, sleds, and silence. Even breathing feels expensive. Historians still argue whether it was hubris, miscalculation, or sheer bad luck that doomed the Sixth Army. But in your bones, you know it's simpler than that. The city itself decided. Stalingrad isn't just a battlefield anymore. It's a living, vengeful organism, swallowing everyone who dares to challenge it. Mikhail, ever the philosopher, grins weakly. You think the city's angry? I nod.
I think it's tired of being burned. He chuckles. Aren't we all? A distant explosion interrupts your thoughts. The Soviets have begun their final push. Artillery rains down on what's left of the German perimeter. The ground trembles like a heartbeat. You and your comrades move forward, cautiously, step by step through the snow, rifles slung low. As you advance, the smell hits you first. Burnt oil, frozen blood, the faint chemical tang of gunpowder that never quite fades. You pass a line of abandoned German trucks, their engines gutted, their wheels half buried in ice. A few corpses sit frozen in the driver's seats, hands still gripping the steering wheels as if waiting for permission to leave. You can't look for long. You're too tired to feel disgust anymore. All that's left is numb acknowledgement. By midday, the resistance grows thinner. Sporadic bursts of gunfire echo through the ruins, but quickly fade. A German soldier emerges from a doorway, hands raised, eyes unfocused. He looks barely human, cheeks hollowed, lips cracked, uniform shredded into layers of frostbitten fabric. He says something in German, voice shaking. You don't understand all the words, but the meaning is clear enough. Ich will nach Hause. I want to go home. You lower your weapon. Don't we all? Mikhail moves closer, watching as more figures appear behind the first. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They shuffle forward silently, arms raised, like ghosts returning to the living. For a long time, no one moves. Then a Soviet officer steps out, his breath visible in the cold. Lay down your weapons, he says. It's over. But it isn't, not yet. Not officially. Somewhere in a bunker near the city's center, Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus sits surrounded by chaos. You've never met him, of course, but word travels. He's trapped, just like everyone else. Hitler has ordered him to fight to the last bullet, to die rather than surrender. Historians still argue whether Paulus hesitated out of fear or principle. You suspect it was exhaustion, the same kind that dulls the mind, slows the heart, makes death sound like a vacation. When the surrender finally comes, it doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like silence. January 31st, 1943. You're standing in what used to be a square, though now it's just a patch of flattened snow surrounded by rubble. The air is eerily still. Then, from somewhere near the German command post, a single flare shoots upward, a pale signal in the morning light. It's done. You watch as officers collect weapons, as columns of German prisoners begin their long, shuffling march through the ruins. Some stumble, others simply collapse, too weak to continue. Soviet soldiers hand them pieces of bread, sometimes even cigarettes. For a moment, the line between enemy and ally blurs. Everyone looks like the same species again. Human. Mikhail exhales slowly. That's it? You nod. That's it. He shakes his head. Doesn't feel like victory. Maybe it never does, you say. He smiles faintly. Then, what was it all for? You don't answer. You don't have to. The question drifts into the wind, lost among the ruins. Later, as night falls over the broken city, you sit by the Volga, staring at the frozen river.
The ice glows faintly under the moonlight, hiding everything it swallowed. Bodies, guns, secrets. Somewhere beneath your boots lies a history that will take decades to uncover. You think about the millions who fought here, the millions more waiting for them back home. You think about how the city, for all its ruin, still stands. Stalingrad. Scarred, silent, immortal. A stray dog wanders past, ribs showing, tail down. You toss it a scrap of bread, and for a second it looks at you with something almost like gratitude before disappearing into the night. You lean back, close your eyes, and breathe. The air smells of smoke, snow, and the faint metallic promise of peace. For the first time in months, you allow yourself to imagine tomorrow. Maybe, just maybe, the world will wake up too.
The days after the surrender feel strange, too quiet, too soft. The city that once roared with explosions now hums faintly with shovels, boots, and the distant clatter of carts. You walk through the wreckage as if wandering through someone else's dream. Every building looks like it has aged a century overnight. Smoke still curls lazily from the ruins, refusing to leave. The Volga remains frozen, its surface a dull mirror, reflecting a sky that can't quite decide whether it's morning or dusk. The war is over here, but the air still tastes of gunpowder and grief. You see the first Soviet engineers arriving, their faces gaunt but determined. They pick through the rubble for anything salvageable: bricks, tools, bits of wire. Somewhere nearby, a group of medics tends to a mix of wounded soldiers, German and Soviet alike. No one talks about sides anymore. They just ask for water. You find Mikhail sitting on a pile of broken concrete, sketching something in a notebook. He looks up, smiling faintly. "I'm drawing how it was," he says, "before all this." You nod. "Before feels like another lifetime." "Maybe it was," he replies. "Maybe we all died and came back a little wrong." You can't help but laugh quietly. "Speak for yourself. I think I came back mostly right, just colder." He grins. "Cold can be cured, dead can't." The wind picks up, carrying the faint ravel of a flagpole. You look toward it and see the red banner fluttering above a half-collapsed building. Once, that might have stirred pride or fury. Now it just feels like an exhausted sigh, the city's way of saying, enough. Historians still argue whether Stalingrad was the true turning point of World War II, or merely one of many inevitable collapses. But for you, standing here, it feels absolute. The world cracked open, and now everything that comes after will be built on these ruins. You wander through the skeletal remains of the city's factories, the same ones that once forged tanks under fire. In a corner of the tractor plant, you find a rusted shell of machinery half buried in ash. You run your gloved hand over it, tracing the metal's cold curve. It's strange how something built for war can seem so peaceful now, like an animal that's finally been tamed. From somewhere deep in the rubble, you hear a faint sound, singing. Not strong, not confident, but real. A small group of soldiers, perhaps 10, sitting around a barrel fire, sharing a bottle and a few scraps of bread. The song is old, one you remember from your childhood, and the melody catches in your throat. Mikhail joins you, eyes soft. "Sounds like home," he murmurs. You nod. Or, what's left of it.
Later, you help a group of civilians clear debris near the central square. Most are women and old men, their hands raw, their faces lined with both sorrow and stubbornness. Every so often, someone finds a keepsake, an enamel cup, a cracked photo frame, a medal half buried in the dirt. Each discovery brings a silence deeper than any speech. A woman hands you a small trinket, an iron button stamped with the shape of a star. "Take it," she says, "for memory." You turn it over in your palm, the metal warm from her touch. Whose was it? She shrugs. Someone who didn't come back. You slip it into your pocket, unsure whether to feel honored or haunted. As dusk falls, the city takes on a strange beauty. The snow glows pink beneath the fading sun, and the shattered buildings cast long shadows like the ribs of a sleeping giant. You find yourself standing by the Volga again, watching the river glint under the last light of day. For months, this river carried death, frozen ferries, shattered boats, bodies drifting beneath the ice. Now, it simply rests. You kneel, press a hand to the surface, and feel the faint vibration of water still moving below, steady and eternal. "Do you think it'll ever thaw?" Mikhail asks behind you. You smile. "Everything thaws eventually." He nods. "Even people?" You say, "Especially people. We're terrible at staying frozen." He laughs quietly, the sound drifting away like breath on glass. You sit together in silence for a long while, watching the horizon fade. The stars appear one by one, soft and cold, as if they've come to check on the living. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle sounds, the first in months. It's headed east, toward home. You close your eyes and imagine stepping aboard, leaving behind the ghosts of this place, the sound of artillery, the endless winter. You imagine the gentle sway of the carriage, the warmth of a stove, the hum of wheels on steel. Maybe, just maybe, you'd finally sleep without dreaming of smoke. But for now, you stay. You breathe in the frost, the silence, the fragile peace. You think of the millions who will never see spring, and the millions more who will spend their lives trying to understand what happened here. Stalingrad will rebuild. People will return. Children will play in the streets where tanks once burned. And someday, long after you're gone, the city will whisper to them, not of death, but of endurance. Because that's what survives when everything else is lost. And as snow begins to fall again, soft and slow, you lie back on the cold ground, eyes tracing the night sky, feeling the weight of the world finally lift, just a little. The river murmurs beneath its ice. The wind hums through hollow walls, and you drift, not into battle, not into fear, but into sleep. Now the war has faded, the sounds of the city grow softer still. Imagine the snow falling in thicker flakes, each one landing with the gentleness of a sigh. The rubble, the river, the ruined walls, all slowly turning white again, as if the world is trying to tuck itself in for the night. You take one last look at the Volga. The ice gleams faintly beneath the moon, and somewhere deep below, the water keeps flowing, steady and calm. Time will move again, though not tonight. Tonight belongs to stillness. You feel your breath slow, matching the rhythm of the river. Inhale the cold air, sharp but clean. Exhale the weight of it all, the noise, the hunger, the endless marching. You survived, and that's enough. Around you, the city sleeps. Somewhere, A lone accordion plays a quiet tune, fragile, almost broken, but beautiful in its persistence. The melody carries through the night like a promise. Even here, life finds a way back. So let it fade. Let the snow cover what it must. Let the silence do its quiet work. You've seen the worst of humanity, and still there's something tender left, something that waits beyond the frost. Drift now. The fire is low, the night is long, and the world, for once, is peaceful. Good night, traveler. You've come far enough.